Okay, I'm going to try and do a tutorial here on how to do the graphing part of this first quiz. So I'm looking at my equation here, y equals 6 cosine 2x minus 3. I recognize that the 6 is my amplitude, and the negative 3 is going to move my midline down 3. So I know if I move down 3, I'm going to have to go up 6 from that. I'm going to have to go down 6 from that. So my lowest point is going to be at negative 9. So I'm going to count my grid marks to make sure if I just count by ones, I'm going to be able to go down to negative 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I'm going to put a 1 right here because this is going to be my scale. And then I need to figure out what the period is for my x-axis label. So remember, to find the period, you have to look at your b, and your b in this scenario is 2. So the period is always 2 pi divided by b. So if I take 2 pi and divide it by 2, then that gives me pi for the period. Okay, so I'm going to come down here to this x label, and I'm going to just click on the pi symbol. So that's going to be my period. And then I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Let's see, I'm going to hit my done button. Okay, so now I have a new screen here, and if you notice on the left hand side it's drawn my scale and it's counting by ones, and then over here on the right I see this little dot that's pi. That's going to be my period. That means I got to have one cosine curve by the time I get to pi. So I can use as many grid marks as I want. So I could actually, now remember, whatever you choose though, you want to pick a number that will divide by 4. So for example, I could do 4 blocks. That would be a good scale to use, 4 divisions, 4 divided by 4. I could do 8. I could do 12. It just makes your graph easier to graph if you'll pick a number that's divisible by 4 when you go to put your pi on here. So I think, so that it's not really tiny and I can see it really well, I think I'm just going to count 8 blocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that's where one cycle has to be done by the time I get to pi. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and graph my cosine curve. So remember, my midline's down here at negative 3. And cosine curve normally starts at a max. So I'm going to go up 6 from negative 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, put a point. Then I'm going to move over 2 spaces. And it's now going to be on my midline. So here's my next point at negative 3. And then I have to go down to a min. So that means I've got to go down 6 from my midline. That puts me down at negative 9. So I'm going to go over 2 more blocks. Put a point. And then I've got to go back up to the midline. So 2 more blocks away, I'm going to be right here. And then I'm going to go back up to a max, and I should end at pi. I'm going to go up to 3, put a point, and there's my graph. And then I'll submit my answer. Are you sure you want to submit? Yes. And then it just goes through and talks about what we submitted. So they sketched in the midline. Here's my graph down below. Theirs is a little bit wider. If you notice, they picked 12 boxes for their scale. So every 3 grid marks, they put a point. We did every 2, which is fine. Okay, so that's kind of how you use that graphing tool.